Article 230.31 permits splicing of service entrance conductors, and there is no requirement that the splice be located above grade. Section 230.31 At specifically permits splices to be made in a junction box. Therefore, splicing service entrance conductors below a deck is permitted, provided that certain conditions are met. These conditions primarily revolve around proper installation practices and adherence to the National Electrical Code, or NEC. Firstly, the junction box must be appropriately sized for the conductors it will house. The NEC provides guidelines for calculating the required size of junction boxes based on the number and size of conductors entering and exiting the box. These requirements can typically be found in Article 314 of the NEC. The goal is to ensure that there is adequate space within the box to safely accommodate the conductors and any necessary splices, without overcrowding or creating undue stress on the connection. Secondly, the conductors must be properly spliced and terminated within the junction box. This involves using approved splicing methods and connectors that are suitable for the type and size of conductors being joined. Common splicing methods include using twist-on wire connectors, also known as wire nuts, crimp-on connectors, or terminal blocks. Regardless of the method used, it is crucial to ensure that the connections are mechanically secure and electrically sound. This means that the conductors should be firmly joined together and that there should be no loose strands or exposed wires. Proper termination also involves ensuring that the conductors are properly insulated to prevent short circuits or ground faults. Thirdly, the junction box must be accessible for future maintenance. This is a critical requirement as it allows electricians to inspect, test, and repair the connections within the box as needed. The NEC defines accessible as capable of being reached for inspection, repair, or replacement without damaging the building structure or finish, or permanently closing any equipment. In practice, this means that the junction box should not be concealed behind walls, ceilings, or other obstructions that would make it difficult to access. In the described scenario, where the junction box is located underneath the deck, it is important to ensure that there is sufficient clearance and access to the box. This may involve providing an access panel or hatch in the deck that allows an electrician to easily reach the box without having to dismantle the deck. The size of the access panel should be large enough to allow for comfortable working space around the box. Also, the location of the box should be such that it is not subject to excessive moisture or physical damage. For example, it should not be located in an area where water can accumulate or where it is likely to be struck by objects. In addition to these general requirements, there may be other specific code requirements that apply to splicing service entrance conductors. For example, the NEC may require that the conductors be identified as service entrance conductors, that they be protected from physical damage, or that they be grounded in accordance with specific requirements. It is important to consult the NEC and any applicable local codes to ensure that the installation complies with all applicable requirements. Furthermore, it is important to use appropriate materials for the installation. The junction box should be made of a material that is suitable for the environment in which it is located. For example, if the junction box is located in a damp or corrosive environment, it should be made of a corrosion-resistant material such as stainless steel or fiberglass. The conductors should also be of the appropriate type and size for the application. Service entrance conductors are typically large-gauge conductors that are designed to carry high currents. It is important to select conductors that are rated for the voltage and current that they will be carrying, and that are suitable for the environmental conditions in which they will be installed. Furthermore, it is important to follow all manufacturers' instructions for the installation of the junction box, conductors, and connectors. The manufacturer's instructions will provide detailed information on how to properly install the equipment and will help to ensure that the installation is safe and reliable. In summary, splicing service entrance conductors below a deck is permitted under the NEC, provided that the junction box is properly sized, the conductors are properly spliced and terminated, and the junction box is accessible for future maintenance. It is also important to consult the NEC and any applicable local codes to ensure that the installation complies with all applicable requirements, and to use appropriate materials and follow all manufacturer's instructions. Consider the ampacity of the service entrance conductors. Table 310.16 of the NEC provides ampacity ratings for various conductor types and sizes, based on factors such as the insulation type, the ambient temperature, and the number of conductors in a raceway or cable. It is crucial to select conductors that have an ampacity rating that is equal to or greater than the calculated load for the service. This will ensure that the conductors can safely carry the required current without overheating or causing a fire hazard. The calculated load for the service is typically determined by adding up the loads of all the electrical equipment and appliances that will be connected to the service. This calculation should take into account factors such as the demand factors for various types of loads, the size and type of appliances, and the potential for future load growth. In addition to the ampacity of the conductors, it is also important to consider the voltage drop in the conductors. Voltage drop is the reduction in voltage that occurs as electricity flows through a conductor. Excessive voltage drop can cause appliances to operate inefficiently or even fail to operate at all. The NEC recommends that voltage drop in branch circuits should not exceed 3% and that voltage drop in feeders and service conductors should not exceed 5%. To minimize voltage drop, it is important to select conductors that are of the appropriate size for the length of the run. Larger conductors have lower resistance and therefore result in less voltage drop. There are various online calculators and tables that can be used to calculate voltage drop based on the conductor size, length, and current. Grounding is another critical aspect of electrical safety. The NEC requires that all electrical equipment and systems be properly grounded to provide a path for fault current to flow back to the source in the event of a ground fault. This helps to protect people from electric shock and to prevent damage to equipment. The grounding system typically consists of a grounding electrode, such as a ground rod or a metal water pipe, and a grounding conductor that connects the equipment and system to the grounding electrode. The size of the grounding conductor is determined by the size of the service entrance conductors. The NEC provides tables that specify the minimum size of the grounding conductor based on the size of the service entrance conductors. Bonding is another important concept in electrical safety. Bonding is the process of connecting all metal parts of an electrical system together to create a low impedance path for fault current to flow back to the source. This helps to minimize the voltage difference between metal parts and to reduce the risk of electric shock. Bonding is typically accomplished by using bonding jumpers to connect metal enclosures, raceways, and other metal parts of the system together. The size of the bonding jumpers is determined by the size of the service entrance conductors. The NEC provides tables that specify the minimum size of the bonding jumpers based on the size of the service entrance conductors. Overcurrent protection is also essential for electrical safety. Overcurrent protection devices such as circuit breakers and fuses are designed to protect electrical circuits from overloads and short circuits. These devices will automatically trip or blow when the current in a circuit exceeds a certain level, thereby preventing damage to equipment and reducing the risk of fire. The size of the overcurrent protection device is determined by the ampacity of the conductors that it is protecting. The NEC provides tables that specify the maximum size of the overcurrent protection device based on the ampacity of the conductors. Surge protection is another important consideration, especially in areas that are prone to lightning strikes or power surges. Surge protection devices, also known as surge suppressors, are designed to protect electrical equipment from voltage spikes that can damage or destroy sensitive electronic components. Surge protection devices are typically installed at the service entrance and at branch circuits that serve sensitive equipment. There are various types of surge protection devices available, each with different levels of protection. It is important to select surge protection devices that are appropriate for the specific application. Electrical inspections are an important part of ensuring that electrical installations are safe and compliant with the NEC and local codes. Electrical inspections are typically performed by qualified electrical inspectors who are trained to identify potential hazards and code violations. It is important to obtain an electrical inspection after any electrical work is performed, to ensure that the installation is safe and compliant. Electrical permits may also be required for certain types of electrical work. Electrical permits are typically obtained from the local building department and are required to ensure that the work is performed by a qualified electrician and that it complies with all applicable codes and regulations. It is important to obtain all necessary electrical permits before starting any electrical work. Working with electricity can be dangerous, and it is important to take all necessary precautions to protect yourself from electric shock. Always to energize circuits before working on them, and use appropriate personal protective equipment, such as rubber gloves and safety glasses. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, it is best to hire a qualified electrician to perform the work. The selection of the right type of junction box also matters. Junction boxes are typically made of metal or plastic. Metal junction boxes are more durable and provide better protection against physical damage, but they are also more expensive. Plastic junction boxes are less expensive and easier to work with, but they may not be as durable. The type of junction box that is used should be appropriate for the environment in which it is located. For example, if the junction box is located in a damp or corrosive environment, a corrosion-resistant junction box should be used. The location of the junction box should also be carefully considered. The junction box should be located in a place where it is easily accessible for future maintenance. It should also be located in a place where it is protected from physical damage. The junction box should not be located in a place where it is likely to be exposed to excessive moisture or heat. The conductors should be properly supported within the junction box. The NEC requires that conductors be supported so that they are not subject to excessive strain or stress. This can be accomplished by using cable ties, clamps, or other approved methods. The conductors should also be arranged within the junction box so that they are not tangled or crossed. This will make it easier to work on the conductors in the future and will reduce the risk of short circuits. The junction box should be properly closed and sealed. The NEC requires that junction boxes be closed with a cover that is securely fastened. The cover should be made of a material that is suitable for the environment in which the junction box is located. For example, if the junction box is located in a damp or corrosive environment, a weatherproof cover should be used. The cover should also be sealed to prevent moisture or dust from entering the junction box. The NEC also has requirements for the working space around electrical equipment. Adequate working space is necessary to allow electricians to safely and effectively install, maintain, and repair electrical equipment. The working space should be clear of obstructions and should be large enough to allow electricians to move around freely. The depth of the working space is determined by the voltage of the equipment and the location of any grounded surfaces. The NEC provides tables that specify the minimum depth of the working space based on these factors. The width of the working space should be at least 30 inches or the width of the equipment, whichever is greater. The height of the working space should be at least 6 feet 6 inches or the height of the equipment, whichever is greater. Lighting is also important in the working space around electrical equipment. Adequate lighting is necessary to allow electricians to see clearly and to avoid accidents. The NEC requires that the working space be illuminated with sufficient lighting to allow electricians to safely perform their work. The lighting should be arranged so that it does not cast shadows on the equipment. Signage is also important for electrical safety. The NEC requires that electrical equipment be clearly labeled with appropriate signage. The signage should identify the equipment and should provide any necessary warnings or instructions. The signage should be made of a durable material that is suitable for the environment in which it is located. The signage should be easily visible and legible. The specific requirements for signage vary depending on the type of equipment and the location. Regular maintenance is essential for electrical safety. Electrical equipment should be inspected regularly for signs of wear and tear. Any damage to a worn equipment should be repaired or replaced promptly. Electrical connections should be checked periodically to ensure that they are tight and secure. Electrical equipment should be cleaned regularly to remove dust and dirt. Regular maintenance will help to prevent electrical hazards and to ensure that the equipment operates safely and efficiently. When working with service entrance conductors, It's crucial to identify them correctly. These conductors bring power from the utility company to the building's main electrical panel. They are typically larger in size compared to branch circuit conductors due to the higher current they carry. Service entrance conductors can be either overhead or underground. Overhead service entrance conductors run from the utility pole to the building's service mast or weatherhead, while underground service entrance conductors run from an underground transformer to the building's service entrance. The type of insulation used on service entrance conductors is also important. The insulation must be rated for the voltage and environmental conditions to which the conductors will be exposed. Common insulation types include cross-linked polyethylene, or XLPE, and rubber. The NEC specifies the allowable uses and installation requirements for different types of insulated conductors. When splicing service entrance conductors, it's crucial to use connectors that are specifically listed and labeled for that purpose. These connectors are designed to provide a secure and reliable connection that can withstand the high currents and environmental conditions associated with service entrance conductors. Common types of connectors for splicing service entrance conductors include compression connectors and bolter connectors. The connectors must be properly installed according to the manufacturer's instructions to ensure a safe and reliable connection. After splicing the service entrance conductors, it's essential to properly insulate and protect the splices. This can be accomplished by using heat shrink tubing, insulating tape, or other approved methods. The insulation should be rated for the voltage and environmental conditions to which the splices will be exposed. The insulation should be applied in a manner that provides a complete and watertight seal around the splices. It's also important to protect the splices from physical damage. This can be accomplished by enclosing the splices in a junction box or other protective enclosure. The enclosure should be made of a durable material that can withstand the environmental conditions to which it will be exposed. The enclosure should also be properly grounded to prevent electrical shock hazards. Before working on any electrical equipment, it's crucial to verify that the power is turned off. This can be accomplished by using a voltage tester to check for the presence of voltage at the equipment. The voltage tester should be used to check all conductors that may be energized, including the neutral and ground conductors. After verifying that the power is turned off, it's a good idea to lock out and tag out the circuit breaker or disconnect switch that controls the power to the equipment. This will prevent someone from accidentally turning the power back on while you are working on the equipment. Lockout/tagout procedures are essential for electrical safety. If you're unsure about any aspect of working with electrical equipment, it's always best to consult with a qualified electrician. Electrical work can be dangerous, and it's important to take all necessary precautions to protect yourself from electrical shock. A qualified electrician has the knowledge, skills, and experience to safely and effectively perform electrical work. They can also ensure that the work is performed in accordance with all applicable codes and regulations. Remember safety first, planning everything out. The NEC is updated regularly, therefore make certain you have the latest edition if and when you plan to work with any electrical